We are wrapping up the NFL draft from over the weekend. Of course, finally get to talk a little football as we've all been sitting here in quarantine. And joining me to talk about Alabama's draftees in the 2020 NFL draft, Mike Rodak. He has spent 9 seasons covering the NFL and then joined us at AL.com this fall. So certainly got a great background in the NFL ranks, and we appreciate you joining us to kind of go over the draft class here in 2020 for the Alabama players. And first and foremost, we had 9 guys get drafted from Alabama. A few surprises that ended up going to free agency, so we'll get to that towards the end. But first and foremost, we'll start off the top with Tua Tagovailoa. He was the first off the board of the Alabama players, going number 5 overall to the Miami Dolphins. Just your thought on sort of his landing spot and really his potential for an immediate impact with the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, it's the spot that we all expected, a year ago. Just there were some bumps in the road along the way, but here he is, and I think the situation is kind of as we all thought it would be. And look, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's 37. He's potentially going to be the opening day starter. But as we know with Fitz, and he was in Buffalo a couple years before I got there. I watched him with the Jets when I was in Buffalo, and he's been plenty of teams across the NFL. He'll start games, but then the problem is, he'll have a great game and he has a terrible game. Great game, terrible game. And it's usually that he has a 3 or 4 interception game, then he gets benched. I think it happened last year at the Dolphins, and they put Josh Rosen in. So I can very easily see Fitz going on a little bit of a rough stretch, and the Dolphins turning it over to Tua, because I think at the end of the day, that's what the fans want. That's why they drafted him 5th overall. I don't think he's going to be sitting out the entire year in Miami. I just don't see that as being necessary medically, but also not a wise football move.
Yeah, and I think best case scenario for him in that landing spot is he does kind of get the chance to kind of get, I guess, weaned into that role. And, to your point, medically, I think there was some speculation. What if he has to sit out an entire year? Maybe he takes this entire year off to rehab. But really, I mean, he's ready to go by all accounts, and obviously give him a few more months, and I think he'll be even closer to that. So certainly a great landing spot. Now, Tua, obviously, Alabama's quarterback, but you got another Alabama quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who obviously got drafted number 53 overall to the Eagles in the 2nd round. And, I know Alabama fans obviously, have enjoyed following his journey, even as he went to Oklahoma. Just your thoughts overall. Obviously, a lot of, concerns about that pick, as you got a guy like Carson Wentz, who is expected to kind of have a long shelf life there with the Eagles. Give us your take.
Yeah, I don't think Jalen was ever going to be a 1st-round pick, or a guy like Tua who, franchise was very clearly going to pick with the intention of starting him for a long time. He was always in that 2nd, 3rd, 4th round discussion, and that's even higher than he was going into last year. So at the end of the day, it's not a bad thing for him that he's a 2nd-round pick. I know a lot of people look at it as a bad situation because of Carson Wentz, and Wentz has $109 million guaranteed in his contract, so it's going to be hard to kind of break through that ceiling. But at the same time, I mean, NFL teams are thinking about the position a little bit differently than they were a few years ago. And even in Baltimore, with Lamar Jackson having a great season last year, we still saw Robert Griffin III, his backup, on the field a lot. And there was that 3 Heisman package that they had, with Mark Ingram in the backfield along with Lamar and RG3, and and then the Saints as well with Taysom Hill. And as we were talking about before the show here, Taysom's probably a better athlete than Jalen. You can put Taysom in different spots. But I think there's still a belief, or a growing belief around the league, that you can use more than one quarterback on the field. And does that justify the Eagles picking him in the 2nd round? Probably not. But they do seem to have some sort of thought process there where they can use him more than just being a backup. And then there's also the idea of Wentz's durability. He's had injury issues in his 4 years in the NFL. They did sign him to the deal, which means they believe in him. But if you do need to go away from Wentz because of an injury, then maybe they think they'll have one of the better backups in the league in Jalen.
Yeah, that's some great insight there. Now, I guess, obviously, you go down the 1st round of Alabama players, we'll kind of switch gears back to that. You had Jedrick Wills, Henry Ruggs, and Jerry Jeudy going in the 1st round. So we kind of did a recap on that coming out of Thursday night. So looking to day 2, you had 5 guys go for Alabama in rounds 2 and 3. You had Xavier McKinney, Trayvon Diggs, Raekwon Davis, Terrell Lewis, and then also Anthony Jennings. Just of those 5 guys, what kind of stands out to you most about where they ended up?
Yeah, the Raekwon pick surprised me a little bit. I was expecting him to go after Terrell Lewis, maybe even a little bit later, because it
Mhm.
really seemed like his stock had dropped. And there's definitely questions about him and his production the last couple of years. It really tapered off at Alabama, and also just his makeup as a player. Is he more
Mhm.
than just a two down player where you can rush the passer and really get some more things going than just being a 6-7 run stopper? So for the Dolphins to pick him, I think it was 56th overall was pretty surprising to
Yep,
me, but
56.
that's what happens. Like with Henry Ruggs, I think getting pushed up a little bit because of his speed. If you do have a trait when you're 6'7" that really stands out, then teams are going to draft you a little bit higher. So that's what surprised me. Anthony Jennings sneaking into the back half of the third round surprised me a little bit, but
Mhm.
the Patriots were certainly a popular pick for him. And he even said on his conference call right after he was picked that Vinny Sunseri, the former Alabama assistant,
Yep.
who's now a coach for the Patriots, had even told him back in the winter that he was going to be a Patriot. So not terribly surprising there.
Yeah, and of course, Anthony Jennings, we followed his story from the beginning at Alabama and what he's gone through from an injury standpoint. Obviously, the leg injury that was so devastating for him, and for him to come back, he's just got a tremendous story, and plays with so much heart. And I think obviously the Patriots get a great pick there in him. Now, looking at day 3, shockingly, so 9 guys are off the board, and there's still 3 more potential guys that you're thinking, okay, day 3, we're gonna hear their name called, between Shyheim Carter, Jared Mayden, and Matt Womack. Those 3 guys, just your overall thoughts on them, obviously not getting in day 3 and shifting to free agency.
Yeah, Carter was the guy I expected to be drafted the most out of those 3, just because of the position he plays. I think
Mm-hmm.
nickelback is a growing position in the NFL where teams are valuing that spot a lot more and are looking for layers of depth at that spot. Whereas in the past, they would just kind of take somebody from safety or corner and put him in there. It's a position in and of itself, and I think Shyheim Carter did a pretty good job
Mm-hmm.
playing that position at Alabama. He can also play safety too. So for him not to get drafted, it was surprising. He did go to the Jets undrafted, and Jared Mayden, who did not go to the combine, unlike Shyheim Carter, that led me to believe that he wasn't as likely to get drafted, but he'll be going out to the 49ers. And then, like you mentioned, Matt Womack still hasn't found a team as of Monday afternoon here. But that's it's going to be interesting for some of those lower tier prospects this year, because typically this coming weekend is rookie mini camp, and that's when they're supposed to do tryouts for players who didn't sign contracts as undrafted rookies. But there's no rookie mini camps, there's no tryout period, so guys like Womack might be in a tougher spot than they would be in other years.
Yeah. So, have you heard anything as to how they're going to go about doing that? With it being different this year, obviously, as we're still in a holding pattern in terms of when sports starts back up.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's similar to college where there's virtual off-season programs for these players, and I think they're voluntary,
Okay.
unlike the mandatory period in the NFL. So it's just Zoom meetings,
Mhm.
and they can't actually do anything gathered on a practice field or anything like that, and they're probably not going to be able to do any of that until July, which is unusual.
Yeah, definitely interesting times. Now, let's go ahead and hit the fast forward button. 2021. I know, we're obviously all so anxious for the 2021 football or 2020 football season to get here, but obviously the 2021 draft prospects. Man, Alabama's got quite a few guys that are really way, way up there that have potential to go in the first round. Can you highlight that class for us and some of the guys that you think could really, turn some heads this season, and obviously as they put their name in the NFL draft portal, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the guys who decided to come back to school, and in some cases, a little bit surprising for Devontae Smith and Najee Harris. And
Mm-hmm.
for Devontae, I mean, he if he has a great year, he certainly could be a high first round pick. I don't see why not. In Najee's case, I mean, the running back position is just tough, and it's going to be tough for him as it would have been if he came into this draft, which was pretty heavy on running backs. There's going to be similar troubles next year, just because teams don't really want to spend high picks on running backs, and they also see guys who played a lot of football in college and have a lot of carries on their resume as potentially buying a high mileage car. So even if he has a good year again, it could be tough for Najee to really break into that top half of the first round. But Dylan Moses is another guy who decided to come back, obviously coming off the big injury with the big year from him, could be pretty high up. And the list goes on. Patrick Surtain will be eligible for the first time. Jalen Waddle will be eligible for the first time. Those 2 guys could be a big part of this Alabama team this year, and also have some traits that NFL teams are really going to value going into the draft next year, and then some the offensive linemen as well. Alex Leatherwood at left tackle, Landon Dickerson at center, Deontay Brown at guard. They're all going to be eligible, and I believe their eligibility is going to be up at Alabama, so they'll be entering the draft and could all get picked as well. And just one last guy, LeBrian Ray, coming off an injury on the defensive line as well, is a guy you could look at for the draft.
Yeah, no doubt it. We know how Nick Saban does it. He locks and reloads over and over and over again. And so certainly no shortage of talent there. Mike Rodak, we appreciate the insight as always. And of course, we'll continue to check out all your posts as you keep us up to date on all of the 2020 NFL draft guys on AL.com. So again, thank you. We appreciate it and have a great week.
You too. Thank you.